You're tuned into the stellar award-winning internet radio station.
You're at the right place at the right time.
Yes, Lord Radio.
Hold up. Wait just a minute. It's Roz on your radio.
Keep it locked right here.
Showcase, fellowship, inspire. Showcase.
Hey, it's Roz on the radio.
Showcase, fellowship, inspire.
Yes, Lord Radio.
Now it's time for another Yes, Lord Radio exclusive.
Hey, everybody, it's Roz on the radio, and you're listening to another YLR exclusive. I want to thank you guys for hanging out with me again today. My guest today is a practicing OBGYN and CEO and president of the Medical Institute for Sexual Health. Dr. Bush is also the co-author of Girls Uncovered, new research on what America's sexual culture does to young women, and also Hooked, new science on how casual sex is affecting our children. But first, Dr. Bush, welcome, and thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Roz, for asking me.
My pleasure. Now, it's no doubt that they do not teach what you're bringing to us in medical school, but I'm glad that you're sharing this information with us today. As a woman, I've had my share of experiences with a gynecologist, and I'm also a mother of two. It's extraordinary, in my opinion, to see that you're having this conversation, which is not just a discussion on illness or diseases in the female reproductive system. I want you to share with us what prompted you to begin the discussion outside of the doctor's office. Basically, why are you talking about this?
Well, I'm talking about it because, first of all, I am a woman. I'm also a wife and mother and grandmother. And as my husband and I were raising our children, we were seeing the effect of what was happening to their friends. Mm-hmm. And here we were raising our children to wait for marriage, to have sex. We were teaching our children character development, respect, responsibility, self-control, and yet they were living in the world with, if you would, with some of their friends who were experiencing all kinds of consequences. And my husband is the one who said it's not enough for us to just teach our four and no more, because they are being influenced.
Right.
And if they are being influenced, why can't we influence their friends? So we began actually that way, talking to their friends, their parents, and actually got with other parents who were interested, and we began a conference called African American Youth and Sex. And started utilizing some of the information that the Medical Institute for Sexual Health had. And the conference grew so large, every year we would have it, that we had to change the name from African American Youth and Sex to just Youth, because other communities said, hey, we want that information for our children as well.
Oh, that's wonderful. Now, nobody wants to talk about the predicament, and I'm so glad that you guys are sharing that, but hardly we see it, that it's rare that people talk about the predicament that we put ourselves in and that we put our children in. And so I pose this question to our listeners and on my website: why is it so hard to talk with our children about sex? And so the crazy part about it is that we seem to avoid this issue, in my opinion. And we're facing what I'm calling now a grandparent epidemic, where one teen pregnancy leads to another one, and grandparents are as young as 30 years old today, which is crazy. But I'm sure as a doctor, you've seen cases beyond this issue, beyond this, having to deal with teen pregnancy or having to deal with this grandparent epidemic. But tell us about some of the cases that you've had to deal with that simply could have been prevented.
Well, I can tell you, I believe the first thing I would say is that our culture has normalized casual sex. And so we've taken it and degraded it from a healthy relationship between two people who are committed together for life to enjoy and reproduce, and we've made it a recreational event. And so we've said it ain't nothing but a thing. Everybody's doing it. We can just hook up without feeling any consequences other than pleasure. But human beings are made to have connection.
Right.
I mean, that's how I will say it was intended. be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth, the only way you're going to multiply is that you do have sex.
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't have the conversation, then what happens is you'll get a 23-year-old in your office who has been in a relationship 2 months, and she'll say, when you ask her, well, how many partners have you had in the last year?
Mm.
She says, do you want me to include the one-nighters?
Wow, really?
And so the relationship is with the main squeeze that she's had for 2 months.
Oh, no.
But she has other partners in addition to that one. So that's the problem, is we have disconnected sex from its purpose, and we've disconnected it or ignored the fact that every time you have sex, every time you invite somebody into your body or you go into their body, there is not just a physical connection, but all of you is connected, your mind, your spirit. Sex
Yes.
is a powerful event, and we get blindsided when we don't recognize that. And part of the blindsidedness is that we get consequences. We get emotional consequences, we get spiritual consequences, we get physical consequences.
Goodness. You know, it's unfortunate for young people to think that way. And I'm not bashing the young people because they got it from somebody, but to think that this person is not your sexual partner because it was a one-night stand is very disturbing.
Well, I can tell you that when you look at the television, the media in general, the movies, the music, it glorifies that type of relationship and make you think that it's something wrong with you if you have relations with that person and then you continue to think about them or pine about it. You know, they say more or less, get over it.
It used to be just men that thought that, but now women think that as well, that they are strong woman if they can just engage in casual sex, the one-night stands, and just, I don't care about him anymore.
But I can tell you that is not how we are wired.
Yeah.
Human beings are wired to connect, and even if it is a one-night stand, you have had your hormones released, your oxytocin, in women in particular, that bonds them not only to the person they're having sex with, but that's the hormone that bonds them to their children. When they have a baby, that oxytocin may produce labor and delivery, but when you hug that baby, it affects your brain, and it bonds you to that baby to care for them, and it bonds you to the person that got you pregnant or that you had sex with. The thing also that we have to remember, dopamine is released in our brains that makes sex exciting.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's a blast when you have sex and you have that climax, and it bonds you also to that person, making you want to repeat that behavior. But if you don't recognize the relationship with that oxytocin and vasopressin that bonds you together, then sex becomes a recreational event. You begin to chase the high and forget about the person that you got the high with. And that's a two-way street. I tell young ladies, if you don't think it affects you that way, why do you slash tires? Why do you, do all those other things that you do when the guy starts talking to somebody else?
Yeah.
Why you throw his clothes out in the yard when you decide that you want to cohabitate without the benefit of marriage?
Yeah.
And you find out he's cheating. How can he be cheating on you when he's never made a commitment to you verbally? But he's made a commitment in your brain.
Wow.
In your heart.
That's good. Let's talk about Girls Uncovered. It's new research on what America's sexual culture does to young women. And tell us a little about the book, that research, and what does that mean, Girls Uncovered?
Well, I can tell you the reason we wanted to write the book was to really go back to the beginning of how it is that our girls have become so sexualized and what those consequences are doing to devastate their hopes and dreams for their lives. And when we looked at it, you found that all cultures from the beginning of time have protected women and their ability to have children and their fertility by limiting the number of partners that they have, by guarding and protecting them. Parents used to be very involved with who their child dated or who their child married because they wanted to protect their fertility. Now, why was it important to protect their ability to have children? Because it was directly connected to the survival of the race.
Yes.
Whether you were in a cave or whether you were in the medieval period or on up to, the beginning of the African civilizations, women were valued and they were protected.
Yes.
The tribe's survival depended on it. Parents were involved. There was a dowry. You had to buy the woman, essentially.
Exactly.
The families selected the guys and the gals, and they were expected, once they committed to marry, hoopla, big celebration, and to have children. Our community, our culture nowadays has changed those standards, has changed that hedge of protection for women. And consequently, we've got all of these issues, STDs, out of wedlock pregnancies, 30-year-old grandmas, because we have uncovered our girls and left them vulnerable and naked, essentially. The book is saying to parents, we're sounding this alarm. Look at the results that we're getting. Is this really what you want for your girls? Is this what the girls want for themselves? Is this what our community needs or desires?
Right.
Hey, let's have this
Now,
conversation.
I'm just thinking back to, the good old days when I was 5 years old. I didn't ask for, to the desire to have multiple partners or to contract, illnesses and diseases. And my goodness, I was thinking about that fairy tale wedding and exactly what you're talking about back in the day, contrary to if people say, that's kind of old fashioned. I was thinking along those lines. Well, one day I do want to have a family of my own, and one day I do want to have this big celebration, and I do want my family to be a part of that. Where is the disconnect?
Well, I think the disconnect came with, if you would, modernization, when we began to have more freedom of mobility. It used to be sort of like you stayed in the community, your mom and your, et cetera. But as we began to migrate to different areas and leaving family behind, I believe that was part of the disconnect, and people began to fend for themselves.
Yeah.
But I have to give media influence a significant impact as well. Studies show that 70% of TV shows now have sexual content, and the average teen spends almost 8 hours a day taking in some type of media, whether it's TV, iPhone, YouTube, you just name it. And you also have the idea that that's old-fashioned and anybody can do it. And so it shows that kids who are involved in that increased media influence are more likely to be sexually active at younger and younger ages. And especially as low as middle schools, not just high schools anymore. And there's this confusion about what is sex, and oral sex, anal sex, mutual masturbation isn't considered sex. But what they're forgetting is that all of you is involved in that. And it stimulates you and, again, makes you drive toward the experience and not toward relationships. And human beings are made for relationships.
Right.
Look at the TV, the movies. Oh, and don't forget the web, where kids are now going to pornography. Seventh grader the other day, quietly reveals that he needed help because that's what he had gotten involved with.
Wow, really?
However, so here you are, seventh grade. You're supposed to be playing soccer and getting out your homework, preparing for college, not worried because now you've got this thing where you have to masturbate or go be with somebody 7th grade, that's too heavy a burden.
Absolutely. Goodness. Now, as parents, you know, I have 2 small children. I'm working on them now, and I always tell everybody, you know, start talking to your children at a very early age. Just learn how to have a conversation so that when these types of issues come about, you know, you're ready to just talk. You guys can talk about anything. And so where do we start as parents?
Well, I would say, first of all, parents have to be physically present.
Yeah.
To have these conversations with them. And the studies have shown, again, that if parents are present at specific times, like when the kids get up in the morning, when they come home from school, and make sure that they have at least one meal together.
Yeah.
And if they're there at bedtime, now you say that's ideal. Well, perhaps you can't hit all of those, but if you're there in the morning, sit down and have breakfast, or there in the evening, sit down and have dinner. How was your day? Tell me about your teacher. Show that you care about helping them and being a part of their lives. It's not just about food, clothes, and shelter.
Exactly.
You can't satisfy them by buying the latest outfit. And by the way, you need to pay attention what the latest outfit is.
Oh, my goodness. Exactly.
But we need to spend time and energy with the kids. And, I am so happy when I see a father having time, not just with his son, but with his daughter. Because if he is hugging her and letting her know that he loves her and that she's beautiful, and even if she starts filling out and getting breasts and he may feel uncomfortable, that 13, 15-year-old still needs to know, my daddy said I was cute, so I don't have to listen to you. You know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think that dads play a pivotal role in this because if you think about the role of a father and even just him spoiling her and letting her know that she is already, you know, a queen before she meets, you know, the man of her dreams, then she will know what to look for. But we miss that opportunity with them too many times.
Yes. I have a son-in-law who, quote-unquote, dates his daughters when they get to be like 13. And that way he takes them out to dinner. He opens the car door for them. He pulls a chair out at the table. He demonstrates how they are to be, how they're to be treated.
That's
he
wonderful.
Treats them like a queen, and so they should not expect any less. And we also have them, and we did this with our girls too, gave them purity rings when they got to be, you know, a certain age, and celebrating that first menstrual period is so important.
Really?
And for our son, he didn't want a ring, so we got him a necklace and let him go to the jewelry store and select the necklace. But again, to be given to his wife at their wedding. So, you know, those milestones, I think your cycle is not something to be ashamed of. It's now letting you know you have moved into a different stage of life, and this is to be protected and valued. And the girls, you know, of course, you're kind of giggling and embarrassed.
Yeah.
But when you frame it, they will value it more than if you don't.
What about our community, the faith-based community, or just the community at large? What can we do if we don't have children, or if we do have children? What can we do as a whole to kind of take a little bit more initiative in the fate of our children?
I would say one of the first things you got to do is recognize that those children are yours, whether you biologically reproduce them or not. If they're coming to your church, they're coming to your synagogue, they're coming to your community, then you have a responsibility to speak into their lives. You never know who's watching you. So it's also important for us to model the behavior that we talked about.
Absolutely.
And I hate to tell you about one young woman who was the youth minister and was sexually active.
The youth minister.
A youth minister. And yet she is talking to the young people about what the Bible says they should do, which is wait for marriage. So integrity has to be a part of what we demonstrate, not just what we say.
Yes.
So what can the faith community do? First of all, let them know what thus says the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Memorize those scriptures, because I promise you, he told us to hide that word in our heart that we would not sin against God. And one of the ways you do it is memorize those scriptures. Several scriptures come to mind immediately, even if you have messed up. There's 1 Corinthians 10:13 that says, there's no temptation that has come upon you that is not common to man.
Mm-hmm.
But God is faithful. He will, with the temptation, provide a way of escape.
Yes.
So to be tempted is nothing. It's normal.
Mm-hmm.
What you do with it is important. It's like I tell the young ladies, when you were headed to the movies and the guy said he forgot something and needed to go by the house to pick it up, the Holy Spirit did what to you or said what to you at that time? He provided a way of escape, but you ignored it. And you went on to the guy's house and you never made it to the movie. If you've got those scriptures in your spirit that you have memorized, they will feed you. They will remind you. Hide your word in his heart, do not sin against God. But even if you should sin, 1 John 1:9 says, if you confess your sin, he is faithful and just to forgive you and to cleanse you from all. So there's nothing you have done that he will not cleanse you from if you confess your sins. And it's God who is faithful to forgive.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to recognize it, you got to ask.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And he will cleanse you. Nothing you've done so bad that will stop the Lord from forgiving you if you ask. And nothing you've done so good. Well, you might say, well, I've never cussed, I've never, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be good enough.
Absolutely.
You follow his guidance and his direction. Ask God, Jesus, into your heart. He will come in. And he will forgive because he said he would.
Absolutely. Now, I have to ask you, obviously we're here having this discussion about sex before marriage, about what parents can do to prevent their children from teen pregnancies, illnesses, and diseases, what the community can do, but also the book, again, it's called Girls Uncovered. And, it's about all of our children, but I just want to touch on a little bit about what the research says and why the focus on girls.
The focus on girls is because they are the ones who purvey or produce. And many of the STDs in particularly affect a girl's ability to reproduce.
Okay.
The CDC reports that half of all sexually transmitted infections in the United States are between ages 15 and 19-year-olds. So before they've even really begun their lives and begun their ability to reproduce, they are getting infected with chlamydia and gonorrhea in particular, which can get inside of their bodies and block their tubes. It's called PID, or pelvic inflammatory disease. So when they are ready to achieve pregnancy, they may not be able to.
Wow.
Guys can get it, but usually if they get symptoms, they will seek care.
Right.
But they can have it and not know it. Over half of the STIs don't have symptoms. And so you may think you don't have a disease, but then you transfer it to the other person when you do have sexual relations. And you say, well, I'll just be safe. I'll wrap it up. I'll put on a condom. But condoms reduce your risk. They do not eliminate your risk, which means that even when you put on a condom, you may not know you've got a disease. You put the condom on, you think you've been safe, but 50% of the time you can still transmit to the other person gonorrhea or chlamydia. And that's the problem that I have with hooking up, and because you've got these diseases that don't have symptoms, they are easily transmitted, and the risk is only reduced with the condom. Birth control pills will delay or reduce your risk for achieving pregnancy, but it does nothing for infection.
Right.
So that's why girls are emphasized. Girls also have more influence over whether they participate than they give themselves credit for. We're not we're not bowled over by our sexual needs and desires. They are normal, but we have the control. And I think I heard someone say girls have we've got the key. We can shut it up.
Yeah.
Or we can open it up. And I think we have given up our power to the guys more than needs to be. And guys they will rise to the standards that girls will set if they will set the standards.
That is good. That's good. I've really enjoyed this discussion today. We are out of time, but I want to thank you so much for sharing this knowledge with us, this book. I'm excited about both of the books that you mentioned today, but I want to know what you guys think out there about this conversation, about premarital sex, about talking to your children, about talking to children in the community at your church, but sharing with people this valuable information. Let me know what you guys think. You can do that by visiting us on our YLR shout box, or join me on Facebook.com, Twitter.com, and YouTube.com. Also, check me out on RozOnTheRadio.com for the recap of this show. And Dr. Bush, how can everybody stay connected to you and get their own copy of this book?
They can go to the Medical Institute website, which is www.medinstitute.org. That's medinstitute.org.
Awesome. We're going to have to continue this conversation because it's just that good and it's just that important for our people, not just in the African American community, not just in the faith-based community, but we all have the potential to be able to change the world in the way that God would be more pleased with us. And this is definitely one of the ways that we can do it. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today.
Thank you.